let's move on then, because mine is actually a banger. Because here's the thing. My actual bad point has been made good today, because the day of recording is the first day of that Espoo Masters tournament in Finland. And within one map, they've killed the hype of Gla1ve already. But here's the problem. You're going to have to wonder, what's my bad point? My bad point isn't Gla1ve joins ENCE. It's actually that this is going to be the worst possible example of what I actually already was a bit disturbed by. Which is, dude, even when the rumour came out that Gla1ve was going there, I can't believe how many people won't even give it a chance. Like, that's what I'm putting down as bad. The idea that, like, Gla1ve doesn't even get a shot in ENCE. Guys, it's fucking ENCE. Like, I don't care what my... I'm boys with R2. His org is not fucking Vitality or G2. It's actually incredible that they're at this level. Like, by the way, even if Gla1ve didn't succeed like Snappy, he's still a very good eligible candidate for your team. Like, if you're not taking him, you're not getting a legendary player, you're getting some up-and-comer. You're essentially gambling you get the next shoe here. And by the way, for all we know, I know this will blow people's minds because I'm not going off like recent form, I'm going off overall fundamentals. On paper, surely Shuey is not actually a better IGL than fucking Gla1ve. He just currently has looked better with his team. And then also, to me, the other angle they're missing here is, it's even possible ENCE fails, and I still won't think Gla1ve was a bomb. It's about the personnel you have. Like, I don't know how he'll work with these players. It's interesting. Like, the joke is, I even spent all the time ever since some Pius appeared, and I even saw, like, similarities between how Device opts. It's almost the perfect player to come and IGL these fucking guys. So, look, the reason why I bring it up is because, like I say, I think now's when essentially the stock's going to be its absolute lowest. So I think that's my problem. Not only just that this BO1, but I think this BO1 sadly will be used just as the ultimate fucking cosh to just wreck Gla1ve with until he actually has some success. Because I can't believe that. That's like I say, people are acting like he got the G2 job over Huxley and he's now the like leader. No, bro, he's the team he's on, and by the way, the salary cut he's probably taking, it's all entirely reasonable for where he is. And if you know how pro sports work, where if someone's a legendary player, if you are a small team, you take a chance on them. You see, it's like complexity with a leash. Loads of people would have thought, what's this going to do? It looks awesome now. You gambled. You gave him his sort of whatever he needed back in the game again, and he's flourishing again. The idea you just bail on Gla1ve completely. Yeah, it looked whack in Astralis, but that was one team, and I'll just put this in there. Are we all going to ignore that it was Astralis, the team that just refused to recruit like 4 good players? And we all know there was shenanigans, like they were paying God, more money than God, put to like Zipniks on the bench. You know what I mean? Like there was so much fuckery around that team. Like to me, if anything, this is the proper, like give Gla1ve a proper second chance now. Like obviously if he fails, whatever. If he dies, he dies. But in this scenario, I think he's more than earned a fucking second chance with a real team.
It's also crazy how many other IGLs get given that easy second nod, but Gla1ve is somehow counted out when he has such a good track record in terms of the events he's won and how consistently he called for so long. And like you said, I think the Sunpius point is actually really underrated because you have an opera who's going to be really similar to someone that Gla1ve has already worked with. And you have him coming into this event and they barely had any practice and they lose a BO1 to like a tier 2, tier 3 team. You can't be putting all of that emphasis on the single result when it's really not setting an example for the long run as to what this ENCE will be able to do. And Gla1ve is famous for his system. Like that whole Astralis team was based around the system that he created, or that he and Zonic created, that gave them an actual game plan and gave them a whole structure to work around in game. You don't create that in a day or a week or a couple of days. So if you're putting so much emphasis on the single result, I feel like whoever's overreacting to these things is just being completely unreasonable.
By the way, this is one thing I also it is a pet peeve of mine in the industry, no. It's where, like, I'm one of the people who spent literally years, piece by piece, building that narrative. Like, maybe Carrigan could be the GOAT IGL, though, guys. Like, let's at least make it a discussion. And then, look, he's gaining. And then what happens is, people think they're joining my team by going, yeah, you're right, Thorin, Carrigan's the GOAT. Because that Gla1ve fucking sucks. And you're like, well, obviously, wait a minute. Whoa. Come on. That was never the other. That wasn't part of my opinion. My opinion in this scenario, if Carrigan's the GOAT, is like, by a sliver, and the second best is Gla1ve. Like, this is one thing where it's too binary in fucking CS. It's not just that because Zonic turned out to be really good without Gla1ve and devices, that means Gla1ve did nothing. Now you've gone too far the other way. I mean, true, before they made it like he did everything, but now you've gone too far the other way. There's got to be a balance on this. He had to, put it this way, I can't even believe I have to say this statement out loud, Maui. You can't win 4 majors if you aren't fucking good at your job in CSGO. I don't know why that would be a crazy, but some people needed to hear it apparently. Some people today needed to hear that the guy who won 4 majors probably pretty good at in-game leading, Maui. Like, what a world.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they're all good at their roles. People would just need to circle back to the main genesis of this point, the fact that people would think that maybe Gla1ve doesn't deserve a chance here and he should prove himself even at a lower stage. It's that people just need to temper their expectations about what ENCE is as an org and how they have more or less, before this really, like a couple of times when they struck gold with Alexi B and they struck gold with Snappy in this lineup, they've always been kind of meddling a little bit lower in like the 10 to 15 range, more or less, as opposed to this top 5 range that they've now inserted themselves so regularly into the conversation with lately, just because, I mean, like we say, they're not the biggest spenders. They're really just predicating a lot of their success on good scouting. And for this kind of pickup, it's not that, I mean, Gla1ve is probably like in some ways, ENCE should probably be like you would say like a tier 1.5 team.
Yes.
But they've just done such a great job repeatedly that we see them as this like world beater, contender, championship title potential team, when in reality, if they just kind of, with this lineup, end up in the 6th to 10th range, I think they probably find themselves in a pretty happy state. I don't think that they're too upset about that, even though that's a bit of a drop off from when they had Snappy and were winning events like IEM Dallas, or an event like IEM Dallas. So I think this is a great landing spot for Gla1ve for a lot of different reasons, and that being one of them, where it kind of just suits the credit that we should give him based off of his track record, and also the fact that this team needs an IGL. Yeah. And really, I don't really know who else they would have really gotten that should be much better than Gla1ve here. Like this is probably, to me, like a pretty harmonious match between the two of them. It's like, yeah, they're dating on the same level.
I mean, I'll even say
go down to like Kixen or something from Apex if they wanted to take a chance on someone, and then you're taking a chance on someone.
No, that's also why, like I say, I don't even think that angle makes sense. The joke is, by the way, here's the statement. I'll take what I said earlier, modify it. If I actually had a choice right now for ENCE, crucial word for ENCE, I would choose Gla1ve over Shuhei, by the way, who does look like a mega prospect. Because the one thing ENCE doesn't have is they haven't properly won yet, have they? They're like this close, and they need the veteran IGL who knows how to win. None of the people that we're talking about who would be on the list, aside from Gla1ve, would fit that bill. They'd all be new people. They'd all be up-and-comers. They'd all be people who themselves haven't actually proven they can win yet. So, yeah, I find that angle so silly. And also, Bowie, on that angle, like, not only are people going too hard on Gla1ve and acting like you had the best team, they act like, dude, he still had, like, the Primus trials and just failed all these tournaments. Like, he had some pretty whack players, like Lucky and fucking Farley. You know, like, give me a break. And then also, I'll just throw this in there. When they say that Langle, like, you should go down to a low level, what's he supposed to go, like, to Australis Talent and then get them to, like, win the fucking We Play Academy League when it starts? What are you... That's just not even a plausible, like, career path, is it? Like, in this scenario, I agree. I just think that it's the perfect scenario for both teams to take this gamble. Also, remember, it doesn't have to last 4 years. If it's shit, you just change in 6 months or something like. But I think it's, for all parties, I think it's worth rolling the dice. I think it's a pretty good move. Right, come on then, Note. What's your ugly point?
So my ugly point was, I think the way Valve has their current ranking set up, and I think you might have talked about it a little bit on the last episode, but the way Valve has their current ranking set up is just rubbish for the long-term prospect of how majors are set up and how in 2025 a lot of invites are going to be based around their ranking. Obviously, Disclosure HLTV has their own ranking system, so I'm not trying to trash on Valve just because we have a ranking. It's more so that I think for the longevity of the game, there needs to be a lot of updates to this, especially the fact that it weighs prize pool so heavily.
Yes.
To me, it really doesn't make sense, especially I think it creates more of an issue because it's making it rife for exploitation, especially from a lot of these companies that are now setting up their own online events with like massive prize pools. You have these $300,000, $500,000, $250,000 online prize pools that are usually sponsored by betting companies, and then they're inviting their own internal teams, like the teams that are sponsored or owned by those betting companies, to their own events. Right now, it doesn't have as big of an impact because the teams haven't done well at the events. So you do have like Bet Boom and Bet Boom events. You have like Perry Vision and Perry Match events. You have like all of these teams that have these sponsored, and obviously you have teams that are sponsored by betting companies, but when you have that direct ownership, it's just removing another layer of obfuscation. But it's creating such a problem because you have these massive prize pools, you have teams owned by the companies that are creating the tournaments, then invited to those events, and they can climb those rankings, hypothetically, just based on winning these insane prize pools, or getting even top 4 in these events. And then you're setting up the Valve invite system to majors right now, and in the future to bigger events based on that ranking. It just seems to me that it's completely ripe for exploitation when it comes to being able to rig where some of these teams could land in that ranking.
The fact that, I mean, the prime example coming up is, of course, the Bet Boom tournament, where Bet Boom gets just an obvious invite into it. And I don't actually think, I mean, in terms of conflict of interest and everything like that, there was to me a little bit less of, I mean, obviously it is bad when a team, when their owner is the one that runs the tournament, because there could be some instance of foul play where like a referee gets their back on an issue that had a gray area, and then there could be some round that swung in their direction, which would give you a result that doesn't feel justified. But when the Valve rankings are simply predicated on the amount of prize money that you get, then obviously there's a huge incentive to just host big tournaments if you have a huge sponsor, and then invite your team to it every single time. And so that it's almost like their points shouldn't even count for this event, for Bet Boom, because if Valve just notices any conflict of interest, well, then they should do away with that. And I would imagine that's more or less kind of also in the same vein of why in 2025 they want to remove all sorts of partnerships and franchises for like teams being part owners of the leagues that they play in, because this could always be the case, and that it kind of is cyclical. So this is it's obviously a pretty shitty issue when like until that rule comes into place, this kind of can just keep happening.
The thing I hate about it so much as well is this is one of those like abstract discussions where we don't need to have an abstract discussion. We can actually talk about the specifics of the scene. Like, one of the things I hate, Note, is this idea that, like, you know, whenever like we used to back in the day beg ESL and etc., just seed the fucking tournament, just do like the world ranking, or I mean, eventually the joke is they actually did a way more biased one, which is have the players seed it. But that was, we all know, like, everyone accepts whatever players say, so that was sort of the hack to get like a expert ranking, right? The reason that I always hated that is I've always given this example. Like, even if like when Thorin had his ranking and HLTV had their ranking, let's say like we have a difference of opinion. The difference of opinion is this: maybe I have like Luminosity number 2 and Fnatic number 1, and you have Luminosity number 1. I'm never going to be having Luminosity number 17 while you're having number 1. Dude, everyone who creates a new ranking system, that's immediately what happens. Like, you go and look at their... Because one thing I hate is they never fucking dry run it. They never just run it or put last year's scores in and go, does that look like a proper top? They never do the most basic experimental things ever. They just launch it like Valve did with CS2 and go, you tell me why it's totally fucked up and then maybe I'll fix it. And you're like... brilliant, what a great system this is. So always launching with some wild shit. Like, everyone saw the top 10 when they launched that ranking system was an actual abomination. There was like tier 2 teams in there who've never done anything at like a major land, so I don't even know how it was calculated. So I already hate the idea that we have to pretend like this is some AI training system. And it's like, well, obviously, you know, there isn't such a thing as subjective judgment. I can't tell who is better out of FaZe and Bet Boom. How could I know who to invite? We all, as humans, know. That isn't even the edge case. The rare outliers are the ones where, like I say, is it 8 or is it 9? That's where you can use a system to help, right? But the thing I hate about this angle is none of us ever would watch the scene, and the obvious tournament that I'm immediately scared of when I think about this system where money can get you points. It's like WESG. Well, we all know WESG was a semi-joke tournament, but it had 500k for first place. And so as a result, in the Valve system, dude, that would be better than like a bunch of the lands we just had in CS2. Like, look how crazy that the points that would get you. And everyone knows, like, the famous one was when Envious won it, like, right before they did a fucking massive roster shuffle. Even they didn't think that lineup was 6er was good. They, like, laugh privately if you don't know about winning that tournament. Like, it's a joke to them. They won, like, essentially the prize money of the major for some shit where, like, half the teams can't even attend, because it was, like, that was even the one where it was, like, Olympic style, wasn't it? You had to all be from the same country. So that's the first thing I immediately worry about. And then the other thing I worry about, actually, is specifically, it's not even just orgs. It's when teams realize the loopholes and the edges. This could be exploited exploited so much. Like, maybe not as obviously now, but dude, think about the circuit before we went online, where there used to be loads of lands. I think back in the day, you already did get teams, by the way, who, if they were like number 3 in the world, but they always lose to number 1, they would sometimes magically skip the next tournament, then go to the tournament where number 1 wasn't there. It gives them a chance to win, and they get a trophy. So people already, in my opinion, used to fuck with the rankings and used to try and like get sort of like empty calories. I mean, I'll even say this. They didn't do it, but if you were real arseholes, like the joke is, if FaZe had have won that final, they should have just immediately called Espu and be like, can we play? Because then you could just boost the fucking streak even, couldn't you? You could just get like 10 more wins on that motherfucker if it's all half-decent team. So I think the problem here is it's just the potential loopholes. They're not even loopholes. They could be enormous. Like they could ruin the whole scene. And then also, like I say, everyone in this call, we might disagree upon, like, here's where we might disagree. Maybe we would disagree. Is Blast actually like a big tournament, or is it like a banana cup? Like, no one seems to have the debate about kind of ENCE or about this. But in this scenario, based on what Valve's saying, if you get a random tournament that has $4 million, say some Middle Eastern guy says, I want to put $4 million in, and half the top 10 comes, but only half, that could somehow, I'd have to look at the formula. Maybe that becomes more important than like Blast World Final or something, which is like, that doesn't make sense, At the end of the day, it's like the old line from football. There's a line where Johan Cruyff, the brilliant manager from the Netherlands, famously said, I've never seen a bag of money score a goal. Well, essentially, the Valve ranking system implies the bag of money is the most important thing. Like, whereas really, the joke of modern CSs, it's why actually, I don't know if you know this, a lot of the team orgs think we should just get away with prize money since they all get so much salary anyway. They all think like the prize money part's like sort of an old relic of the bad old days where you needed to win that money to live. Like, in the modern day, ESL's shown you this. They've had tons of Pro League and Sydney and stuff where like they're not even close to the major money, but they're still the best tournaments outside of the majors and kind of ENCE and Cologne. We can all see that with the eye test. But in the Valve system, maybe they wouldn't be considered that. So I'm quite concerned because in general, the problem I always have when there's an issue from Valve is, one, how do we communicate to them that's a problem and are they listening? And then two, who are we even contacting? Like, is that the same person who does the balance? You know what I mean? Like, it's all over the place. So even though right now people aren't worried because it hasn't kicked in essentially yet, dude, I think there's almost certainly going to be problems with that. And there's going to be loopholes that people can exploit, sadly. To see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.